Airports are a mess, right? Anyone who's traveled gets it. Moms juggling stroller bags, execs practically glued to their screens, kids zipping around while their parents try to wrangle them like it's a full-time job. San Diego International was no different that day, just another whirlwind of travelers. But for Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes, this wasn't just another day at the airport. He stood out in his crisp dress uniform, shoes shined so bright you could see your reflection. Medals pinned across his chest, each one carrying a story, some heavy, some heroic, all hard-earned. But the real weight he carried wasn't the uniform or the medals. It was what waited for him out on the tarmac. A casket draped in the American flag. Private First Class Elijah Brooks, just 22 years old, taken way too soon. Marcus stopped just past the terminal's sliding doors, straightened his cap, and took a deep breath. This wasn't some routine assignment. This was a vow, a duty that ran deeper than any mission he'd ever been handed. No soldier gets left behind. He moved through the crowded terminal with a quiet kind of strength. People noticed, some gave quick nods, others just stared, taking in the sight of a soldier in full dress. He reached the airline counter, slid his military ID and official orders across, and waited. The agent barely glanced up, her fingers already tapping away at the keyboard. Then she froze, frowned, looked again. "Sir, can I see those papers one more time?" Her voice had changed, tight, like something was off. Marcus passed the documents back, his eyes sharp, catching every detail. The way she hesitated, the quick glance she shot to her coworker, the tension in her posture. Something wasn't adding up. She leaned over, whispering to another agent. The guy looked up, met Marcus's gaze for a split second, then dropped his eyes like he'd seen something he shouldn't have. When she came back, her smile was fake, way too stiff. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, "but there's an issue with your ticket. We can't let you board right now." Marcus didn't react. Not a flinch. He'd faced down tougher situations, combat zones, high-stakes meetings, you name it. But this felt like a different kind of fight. "I'm escorting the remains of a fallen soldier," he said, his voice steady, pointing to the papers still in her hand. "Everything's in order." The agent wouldn't meet his eyes. "I understand, sir, but it's a security protocol. We can't override it." He tilted his head just a bit. "Security protocol?" "Yes, sir. It's just policy." Marcus didn't blink, didn't budge. "Policy? What kind of policy?" The line behind him was getting longer now. People were starting to notice, their whispers growing louder. But Marcus didn't step back. He stood firm, feet planted like he was ready to hold that spot all day. "Ma'am," he said, calm but unyielding, "this is a military assignment, not a vacation. My orders are valid. I need to know what's actually going on here." She glanced over his shoulder, practically begging for someone to bail her out. A moment later, a supervisor showed up, mid-50s, tired eyes, gray creeping into his hair. He crossed his arms, gave Marcus a once-over, and started talking in that slow corporate tone people use when they're trying to smooth things over. "Sir, I'm sorry for the inconvenience," he said, "but we have policies in place, and we can't override them at this time." There it was again. Policies. Marcus took a slow breath, the kind you take when you're holding back a storm. "I've done this before," he said, every word measured. "I know the process, I know the policy, and I know there's no reason I should be standing here instead of boarding that plane. So let's cut to it. What's the real issue?" The supervisor shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "It's just an extra security measure, nothing personal." Marcus's jaw tightened. Nothing personal. Yeah, right. He'd heard that line too many times. It's what people say when they're dodging the truth. They were waiting for him to lose his cool, to give them a reason to escalate. But Marcus wasn't playing that game. By now, the crowd wasn't just watching. They were invested. A woman in a red jacket leaned toward her husband, muttering something. A kid nearby looked up from his phone, trying to figure out why a soldier in dress blues was getting held up. Then, someone spoke up. "Excuse me, is there an issue with his clearance?" Marcus glanced over. The voice came from a guy in his 60s wearing a USMC cap and a look that said he'd seen his share of battles. A veteran. The supervisor squirmed. "No, sir, it's not about clearance. It's just standard protocol." The Marine shook his head, arms crossed. "I've been through airports more times than I care to count. Never seen protocol stop a soldier from bringing one of our own home. So what's really going on?" More voices piped up. The murmurs turned into questions. Phones started coming out, screens glowing as people hit record. The vibe in the terminal shifted, like a storm was brewing. The agent behind the counter looked rattled, her eyes darting from the crowd to her boss. The supervisor sighed, rubbed his forehead, and mumbled, "I'll check on something," before slipping into a back room. Marcus didn't move. He stood tall, hands at his sides, eyes locked forward. He wasn't going anywhere, and now neither was this moment. The usual airport buzz, announcements, rolling suitcases, chatter, faded into nothing. The air felt heavy, charged with tension. The passengers weren't just waiting for their flights anymore. They were watching, listening. A woman in her 40s shook her head. "This ain't right," she whispered. "He's in uniform." A guy in a hoodie was typing fast on his phone, his face intense. The airline had no clue how fast this was about to blow up. Another voice cut through. "Excuse me, sir?" Marcus turned slightly. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, stood a few feet away, phone in hand. She looked nervous, but determined. "I don't mean to butt in," she said, "but are they really stopping you from boarding?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. People nearby leaned in. Marcus gave a short nod. "That's right." She blinked, clearly shocked. Then she held up her phone. "I'm streaming this live right now. People need to know about this." And just like that, the whole game changed. The terminal was buzzing now, but not with the usual airport chaos. It was something else, something heavier. The young woman's words, "I'm streaming this live," hung in the air like a spark ready to ignite. And it didn't take long for others to follow her lead. A guy in his 30s, wearing a baseball cap, pulled out his phone and started recording too. "This is messed up," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "He's literally escorting a fallen soldier home." From the back of the line, a woman's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Can someone explain why this man's being kept off his flight?" The energy in the room shifted. People who'd been unsure about getting involved were now leaning in. The hesitation was fading, replaced by a growing sense of collective outrage. The crowd wasn't just a bunch of strangers anymore. They were witnesses. The airline staff felt it too. The agent behind the counter froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, her eyes bouncing between the growing number of phones and the passengers staring her down. She looked like she wanted to disappear. Her supervisor still hadn't come back, and every second he was gone made things worse. The Marine from earlier, the guy in the USMC cap, stepped forward again, his voice cut through the tension like a knife. "I've seen a lot in my time," he said, addressing the whole room. "But I never thought I'd see a U.S. soldier, especially one bringing home a fallen brother, treated like this." The terminal went quiet. Even the overhead announcements seemed to fade into the background. All you could hear were the soft clicks and beeps of phones recording. The Marine squared his shoulders. "This is a disgrace." The agent's hands were trembling now as she tried to keep typing, but it was no use. The situation was spiraling, and she knew it. The crowd wasn't just murmuring anymore, they were demanding answers. A woman pushing a stroller didn't even glance at her crying baby. She was too busy staring at her phone, her jaw tight as she scrolled through something that clearly pissed her off. From somewhere down the line, a voice muttered, "It's already trending." Marcus didn't react. He didn't need to. His posture said everything, calm, steady, unbreakable. He wasn't here to make a scene, but he wasn't backing down either. The air felt electric now. More phones were up, streaming, snapping, posting. The story was spreading faster than anyone could have predicted. The guy in the hoodie looked up from his phone and let out a low whistle. "Man, this is blowing up everywhere." Marcus didn't smile or flinch, but he could feel it. The momentum was shifting. A woman in a denim jacket gasped as she stared at her screen. "Oh my God," she whispered to her husband. "It's already on Facebook." The Marine checked his phone and gave a gruff chuckle. They have no idea what kind of fire they just started. Then, like clockwork, the airport loudspeaker crackled to life. "Attention passengers! Due to unforeseen circumstances, Flight 237 to Phoenix will be delayed. We apologize for any inconvenience." A few people groaned, but most didn't care. Their focus was locked on Marcus, on the counter, on the growing storm. This wasn't about flight delays anymore. It was about respect, about doing what's right. A young woman by the windows gasped again. "He's on Twitter now." She turned her phone to show the crowd. The tweet was bold, all caps. They just denied a black U.S. Army lieutenant colonel his flight while escorting a fallen soldier's remains. This is how we treat our heroes? Let him fly. The numbers under it were climbing fast. Likes, retweets, comments piling up. Another tweet popped up, this one from a big veteran support group. "We're aware of the shameful incident at San Diego International. Our service members deserve better. Expect action." That was it. The airline had lost control of the story. The agent behind the counter looked like she was about to melt into the floor. She turned, practically sprinting through a frosted glass door behind her, probably to warn someone higher up. Marcus stood tall, eyes forward. He'd seen moments like this before, not in airports, but in war zones, in negotiations, in rooms where the stakes were life and death. He knew what it looked like when the people in charge realized they'd screwed up. This wasn't about him. It was about Private First Class Elijah Brooks, a young soldier who didn't make it home. Marcus had one job left, to bring him back with the honor he deserved. The crowd was still now, waiting, watching. The tension was so thick you could feel it like a physical weight. Then the supervisor finally came back, but he wasn't alone. A second man walked beside him, tall, in a sharp navy suit, with an airline ID clipped to his pocket. His posture screamed corporate crisis mode. This guy was here to put out the fire. He scanned the room quickly. Marcus, the Marine, the crowd, the phones still filming. He cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Colonel Hayes," he said, his voice smooth but careful, "we're so sorry for the miscommunication. There was an issue with our system, but we're fixing it now to get you on your flight." Miscommunication. Marcus knew that word well. It was code for, "We got caught, and now we're scrambling." He let the silence hang for a moment before responding. "An error, you say?" The man nodded fast. "Yes, sir. A regrettable mistake. Not intentional at all." The crowd wasn't buying it. The Marine muttered something under his breath, shaking his head. Others scoffed, their phones still rolling. The airline rep adjusted his tie, sweat beading on his forehead. "We'd like to escort you to the gate now, Colonel. First-class accommodations, of course." First class. As if that was the point. Marcus didn't look at him right away. His eyes flicked back to the counter, to the agent who'd first told him no without a second thought. The one who'd whispered to her co-worker instead of doing her job. He exhaled slowly. "I appreciate the effort," he said, "but I need to clear something up." The rep nodded, eager to move on. "Of course, sir." "If no one had recorded this," Marcus said, his voice steady, "if no one had spoken up, would I still be standing here?" The rep's mouth opened, but Marcus didn't let him answer. "You don't need to say it. We all know." The crowd murmured in agreement. Heads nodded. The vibe wasn't just anger anymore. It was disappointment, the kind that sticks with you. The rep tried to recover. "Sir, we sincerely apologize." "This isn't about apologies," Marcus cut in. "It's about accountability." The terminal felt different now. The passengers weren't just upset, they were let down. And that's a harder thing to shake. The rep straightened, still trying to salvage the moment. "Colonel, let us get you to your flight." But before he could finish, another voice broke through. "Sir," a new voice cut in. It was a young TSA officer standing at the edge of the counter, his face pale but serious. He held out a phone to the airline rep. "You're going to want to see this." The rep frowned, took the phone, and swiped through the screen. His expression changed fast, color draining, jaw tightening. He didn't say anything, but he didn't have to. The crowd could feel it. Something big just dropped. The Marine, arms still crossed, raised an eyebrow. "What's the problem now?" The rep handed the phone back, his eyes shifting from confident to panicked. The backlash had just gone national. A major news outlet had picked up the story. The headline was raw and unforgiving. U.S. Army colonel denied boarding while escorting fallen soldier. Airline faces backlash. The article featured a video clip from the terminal, Marcus standing tall, the rep fumbling through excuses, the crowd's growing anger. It was all there, unfiltered. The rep took a shaky breath, looking at Marcus with something new, fear. "We deeply regret this situation," he said, his voice thinner now, almost hollow. "We're preparing a public statement to clarify." Marcus didn't let him finish. "The public already knows the truth." That shut him down. The rep stood there, lips tight, eyes darting from the crowd to the phone still recording. Marcus scanned the room, the Marine, the passengers, the young woman still live streaming, strangers who'd stepped up without hesitation. He turned back to the representative. "I don't need first class. I don't need special treatment. I need respect. And so does the soldier I'm escorting." A murmur rippled through the terminal. Heads nodded. Someone in the back said, "Exactly." The rep gave a small nod, almost defeated. "Understood, sir." The Marine let out a low grunt of approval. Marcus adjusted his cap. "Then let me finish my mission." But the airline's problems were just starting. The story was out of their hands now, moving faster than they could spin it. The terminal didn't feel like an airport anymore. It felt like a stage. Phones were still up, passengers watching like they were waiting for the next big moment. Then something new happened. A man in a dark navy suit stepped into the scene. His walk was deliberate, confident. No airline badge, no security pass, just authority. People parted as he approached, catching a glimpse of his ID, Department of the Army. He walked straight to Marcus and extended his hand. "Colonel Hayes," he said, voice clear and commanding. "Major Thomas Beckett, Department of the Army. We've been briefed on the situation." Marcus met his handshake, firm, steady, no words needed. Beckett turned to the airline rep. "We're taking it from here," he said coolly. "Colonel Hayes and the remains of Private First Class Brooks will not be flying commercial." The rep stammered. I understand. You were just trying to cover your tracks," Beckett said, his tone flat but final. It wasn't angry, it was done. He faced Marcus again. "The Pentagon's arranged a private military flight. Your transport's ready." A gasp spread through the crowd. Whispers followed. The military had stepped in. Marcus exhaled, not out of relief but resolve. Elijah Brooks was going home the right way. "Understood, Major." Beckett gave a curt nod, then shot one last look at the rep. "This will be addressed." It wasn't a threat. It was a guarantee. Marcus turned to the Marine, the man who'd spoken up first, who'd started the dominoes falling. "Appreciate you, brother." The Marine tipped his head. "We take care of our own." Then Marcus faced the crowd, the people who'd filmed, posted, spoken out. He gave them a slight nod, straightened his uniform, and walked forward. Not to a gate, to something bigger. The fallout hit hard and fast. The airline thought they could smooth it over. A quick apology, maybe a vague statement from the CEO, some internal policy review. But the public wasn't letting it slide. The video was everywhere: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, news channels. Veteran groups posted scathing statements. Politicians from both sides called for answers. The airline stock tanked by the end of the week. A hashtag pushing for a boycott trended worldwide. Their customer service lines were flooded with complaints. Then came the knockout punch. A coalition of veteran advocacy groups filed a lawsuit, citing discrimination and failure to honor service member protections. The airline was cornered. The CEO finally went on camera, calling it a regrettable misunderstanding. He said the employees involved were on leave, but it was too little, too late. Marcus wasn't watching the news, though. He was on another mission. He stood quietly beside a flag-draped coffin as Private First Class Elijah Brooks was returned to his family. The young soldier's mother clung to her husband, both of them carrying a grief too heavy for words, mixed with pride for their son's sacrifice. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence said it all. This was never about going viral or grabbing headlines. It was about something deeper, something real: respect. And that's the fight worth having, isn't it? Respect shouldn't be a negotiation. It shouldn't depend on who's watching or how many likes a video gets. It should be a given, especially for those who put everything on the line for us. That day in the terminal, regular people showed something powerful. When you stand up, when you speak out, injustice has nowhere to hide. So if you believe in doing right by those who serve, don't wait for a moment like this to go viral. Make respect the standard. Use your voice. Because silence is what lets this happen again. And next time, there might not be a crowd with phones.